Welcome to another Lew Perspective. How are you doing, John?
I'm good. How are you, Harold?
Wonderful, wonderful. We have been talking about for some time about talking about the pyramids.
Yes.
And a lot of times that, we think about it, we think these ancient structures are still standing all these years. And I've often thought about them, from growing up. You see these pictures of these giant pyramid
buildings. You can't even,
triangle, shape
Yeah.
that are standing up, and never really dived into it. Other than I remember being in school, we studied it in architecture,
Oh, you did? Okay.
and and I didn't really grow to the full appreciation, other than the fact that this structure was a real pronounced structure that was built by prehistoric sort of context.
Yeah.
And
sure.
so, what we'd like to dive into is sort of talking about this, and it's a big subject.
It is. You can't do it in one
No.
30-minute.
So
segment.
I'm thinking we're probably going to have maybe what
We'll do
four.
four. We'll do a month's worth of just diving into it because it's such an interesting topic.
It is. Absolutely.
Just to think, again, they did teach us in elementary school, and
No.
you're right, like
No. But it's in
they brushed on it, right? Like, oh, here's this is what it is. It's an ancient wonder of the world, and
yes,
but they didn't get into like the real details of why, and maybe that's just
even the civilization that it was creating.
It was very brief, right?
Yeah.
Like, you talked about the Egyptians because everyone knows pharaohs, and
yes,
right. So
right,
but it was very brief compared to what actually, like, when you start looking at it. I mean, there's people that specialize in this stuff, right? That only know. There's people that this is their job, just to learn about this stuff.
They were craftsmen. I mean, we were led to sort of believe earlier that the pyramids were built by slaves, but it was later defined that no, it was people that were being paid to do this by the pharaohs.
So
at the
that
time.
was their job.
Yeah,
so interesting.
What was even more interesting is we were talking about this, and we're going to kind of dive a little bit into sort of just the historic aspect of Egypt, in a sense, kind of an overview of that. But I found out that the pyramids were like over 3,000. They were standing 3,000 years BC before Christ.
Yeah.
3,000 years. And even then, it didn't really say when exactly they were built. But when you think about 3,000 years before Christ, and you think about modern day today, and you think that structure is still standing when there have been so many modern buildings that have come and gone, and these structures are still standing, it's really mind-blowing to me.
Like how? Like how in the world...
How
did people from 3000 BC figure out, or whatever the year it was, figure out
when? Well, in the early...
and then I guess the other question I would have is, if we were to bring these people back from 3,000 years ago, would they be like, "Oh yeah, that's exactly how we built it. We knew it would last forever"?
Well, that would be kind of
interesting. Be an interesting thing to think of? Like, what was the plan for that?
Yeah,
I'm assuming it was to last forever, right?
Because they figured the pharaohs, and
it's their afterlife, whatever it is.
These structures were built as tombs,
right?
And also at the same time, they were monuments to the pharaohs that were actually commissioning them to be built. Now,
crazy.
What I sort of thought is, and think about this too. They were saying one of the pyramids. It took them over 100 years to build. And then when I started to think about 100 years to build, that's like when you think about even the country of the United States being a couple of 100 years old, you say it took them at least almost half that time to build one pyramid.
And I'm assuming, and I didn't look too much in it, but I'm assuming that the pharaoh had already passed as well during that time, right?
Yes.
It's not like he was alive for the 100 years and then...
Well, so when did they start to build on it is the question. And then they had to bury the king, or the pharaoh in that time, in that structure. So did they finish it before?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's what I mean.
So many things that we need to figure out.
That's some of the stuff that want to come out. Yeah. It probably is.
We'll get more into it as we answer some questions.
I think one of the things that still fascinates a lot of maybe archaeologists and you would say historians is sort of the mind-boggling aspect of how did they construct this structure, with massive blocks.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yes, I had here, what did I write down or type out? It was 6 million tons of limestone estimate. Million.
Okay.
6 million. They're built mostly of limestone. So that's just the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Yeah. Is that the largest one?
Yeah.
Because there were 3 different sizes.
Just the Great Pyramid.
Did you have any height or so
I don't have the dimensions.
Because I remember seeing one of them, I think, and I thought it was like maybe the smallest one.
Yeah.
I thought it was saying something about it was over 200, and I'm going to say 240 some feet high.
It's huge.
And that's the smallest one. There were 3 in the pyramid complex of Giza.
Right.
And they all had a different name for them.
Right.
And the people that basically were part of putting this together, I saw a number, something that they probably had over 10,000 workers working on the pyramids. When you think about that. But what was even more interesting, and I don't know if you found this out to be, but they were saying that some of the historians modern day, up to date, probably within the last few years, when you think about 3,000 years, you said the last few years, they were doing a test, I think it was back in 1997, somewhere in that neighborhood, that they were testing to see, how many men would it take to pull a 2-ton block of concrete?
Okay.
And they said, and if I'm correct, I thought I saw somewhere like 8 men to be able to pull
that one block,
that block, or something like that. And so they were saying that when they were testing, they were trying to see was it feasible for humans to do this, and then to do this in a time frame that would actually be such that the pharaoh would be able to see this monument before they're passing, or they're dying. But that's still that question of mystery in a sense that really hasn't been completely answered, and I don't know if anyone's really. I mean, we can still speculate down through the years. I think that's what makes it so fascinating, is the pyramids being these ancient structures that are almost boggling tall and massive. That you
just
kind of
and moving it, and
just the precision. Stone. I mean, you're talking about moving a stone that's like over 2 or 3 tons.
I know. You can barely move our couches and chairs right now.
Think about that.
This is like solid.
And on top of that, to get it constructed in such a way,
exactly the precision. They fit exactly correct.
And and so then I started looking at sort of they were saying that they were using like a filler in between the stones to sort of lock them into place. But they were doing this, and they talked about the material, and then they talked about them having to use wood to ignite the heat, the filament in between there, and that they had to go out and get material from the desert areas in order to create the fires to do this. So it sounded like, I mean, when I think about construction science, I mean, that was construction science.
What is it saying? Like the mortar or whatever it is, right?
Exactly.
That's what you're doing.
Right. So
just to have the knowledge to do that, that time.
I mean, you had some of probably the pretty, I would say, major craftsmen that were actually implementing that. And that's what they would talk about too, is that these craftsmen would actually build the important parts of it from the inside of the
there's tunnels and rooms and everything.
And when you think about that, think about air getting into that. Right. Where these guys are having to build this, they've got to do this and have light.
And plus, they had to build, or they moved. Like, what do they moved some large objects in there, right? I'm sure.
Oh, okay.
Horses and chariots, and I'm sure they had
to be able to do that. Right? I mean, you think about
how do you have to think through all that first, right?
Get in and out of there.
Yeah. How do you put it all in? And how do you know?
And these narrow tunnels will show that. Well, I would love to really actually go see it physical.
That would be awesome. Yeah, I haven't gone either, so I just in pictures and
Yeah, I think a majority of everyone is that's what they see, but there are folks out there that have actually visited that and are always fascinated just to even talk with them.
Yeah.
In that.
I'm sure it is like you're in awe when you look at it. It was
kind of interesting. Raquel, our daughter, she had gone.
Oh yeah, that's right. She did go.
Yeah, she said it was really. She said just to go there. She said you almost wanted to feel claustrophobic and going down some.
Oh, because she went
down in some of the. And she said there were, crevices that you kind of went into. But she said it was interesting because she said it sort of gave you this kind of eerie feeling of going into this.
It's like a cave,
kind of like a cave in a sense. And yet she said you could look at all the details. And she said it was so many details inside of this that she said it was almost mind-blowing in a sense. So if you could imagine, over the course of time, you've got these craftsmen that are carving out these spaces. And again, it's kind of like you were saying limestone. They used limestone. It was granite.
Yep.
And then I thought there was one other.
There is. I did not. Limestone and granite is what I have down.
Okay, it was limestone and granite, and I thought it was one other stone that. Oh yeah, there was another stone that, and I can't call the name of it, but it was indigenous to the area.
Okay.
That they used those three.
So those are the three types.
This stone was really hard, and they said on the limestone you could use copper tools to chip and cut it out.
Yeah.
But then on this other stone, you really had to have a specialized rock type that would actually break it and chip it to get it to do that. But if you can imagine trying to get a large, massive one block carved out so you could do the next block, and how many blocks that it took to build the base to start climbing up the stairs. So that right there is amazing. Always fascinating when I think about the pyramids. And
it's crazy.
And then they had the other buildings, supporting buildings that were part of the funeral procession or causeways for being able to and they sort of, because the Egyptian culture, it seemed that they believed heavily in the afterlife. That they weren't talking about heaven and hell or anything like that. They were talking about this place where the pharaohs would spend sort of eternity.
Right.
And so these structures were designed such that they were a testament to who the pharaoh was and the importance of them in the civilization.
Yeah.
And then also for them to be able to store. They started storing grain in the pyramids.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, they would store grain in the pyramids for them to have in the afterlife.
Okay.
Along with their riches.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Food to
live. If you think about that, it's like, wow, again, it kind of goes back to the Egyptian way, the civilization itself and the way they were thinking. Do you have any other information that you found?
Let's see. So the pyramids, I know when you think of the pyramids today, you think of just that or brownish, grayish, brownish, right? Whitish color, right? Because it was how old, right? I mean, it's been thousands of years. They were originally painted vibrant colors like red, blue, and yellow.
The pyramids?
The pyramids, yeah.
Outside?
And they were covered with a white limestone casing that made them sparkle like diamonds.
Oh.
So it's not just, again, this is like the details, right? Like it's...
So what happened to all of that over the course of time?
Just
eroded away?
Yeah, just gone. But at one point they were very, very colorful and vibrant.
Wow.
Which is like, you don't think about that today. You're just like, oh, it's just stone. And
right.
But back then, can you imagine if you saw a huge pyramid that was vibrant in color? And
I know, sitting out in the middle of the desert.
Right?
Shining, shimmering.
You know, we haven't even talked about like the Sphinx.
No, that's what I mean.
That's
like all the supporting structures around it.
Structures, right? Like you think that's extremely famous sculpture. But anyway, and that was same thing, painted, bright colored. Not what we think of it when we think of the Sphinx today. It's just, again, that it just looks like stone. But back then it had the vibrant colors.
I mean, even the stonework and some of those, I mean, if you could see that, I mean, in photos that,
it's amazing.
You know, it's absolutely. I mean, the craftsmanship on that was just,
it's amazing. So bright colors.
Huh.
You don't think about that.
Well, so now in the largest pyramid structure, well, no, actually, I think it's the middle, the middle size one. At the top of it, it had where they had started marble or
marble,
something,
different type,
and it was not finished.
Right. That's what I heard too. That's what I read too. But I didn't get too much into it.
Okay, so I mean, I found a little bit about it, but they said I think they started doing that, but it said the pharaoh passed away before it was completed, so they stopped the process and never finished bringing it down. But it was going to be a smooth.
That's crazy.
Down the side of the pyramid itself, and I was trying to think, what would that have looked like?
Crazy marble.
Yeah, just a massive marble structure.
Yeah.
So now to sort of understand a little bit more about the Egyptian culture, do you have any information on
culture itself?
Yeah, just
purpose again.
How they came about to be.
I don't know, but we know that it was built as tombs for the pharaohs.
Okay,
right? We all know that.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of what's taught about the Egypt, the pyramids, right? Is that, hey, it's a tribute to the pharaohs. They're buried in it, right? You have movies made all about the pharaoh's curse and all that stuff. Don't disturb their resting place. But I don't have anything else beyond that as far as just the culture and really the understanding of it.
What about like other pyramids? I mean, there were other pyramids.
There were other pyramids, yes. And so they're not, so when you think of pyramids, we always think of Egypt. Yeah. We always think of Giza, really.
Right.
The main big, huge pyramids ones with the Sphinx, right? Giza.
Yeah.
But it's not just there in that area, right? You got to go down to the, what's today is Sudan.
Yes.
And that is where there were a ton of pyramids as well. So I think I have down here, they were first discovered by Carl Richard Lepsius, 1842. He found 67 total pyramids, but he found them down in the Sudan area.
Okay.
Not what we think of today in Giza, right?
Okay.
And especially the traditional pyramid. We think of the smooth-sided pyramids, right?
The triangle.
The prism, exactly what the shape is, or pyramid. But it was actually step pyramids that were discovered first.
So were those maybe the more ancient?
Maybe it's the more ancient before. Yep. Maybe that was the case. I mean, you think also through kind of pyramid shapes. Yes, Sudan, that's when they discovered them there. But they also had those types of shapes around the world, right?
Yes.
If I think of that, I think of kind of
even in an Aztec.
Yeah, the Aztecs, the Mayan, right? Like I think of those.
They had step pyramids and so on.
Yes. So
do you think they might have been inspired by that kind of thing? That's kind of
would be right. I mean, there was no communication back then.
Okay.
Would they have known that somewhere
early
across the world? No, I don't think so.
No,
I mean we can get aliens and all that stuff too.
Yeah, but I was just trying to think that were there global. So are we sort of safe to think that they didn't travel enough to carry that?
I don't know if they did. Do you think?
Well, that's really interesting to say.
That's another aspect that we need.
Yeah, they talk about again pyramids.
Around the world,
right?
Like there are things around the world that were happening that people did the same things.
Okay.
Or is it just human, like the course of a human mind? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, well, dudes, we're all humans as a species. Do we just go ahead and say, oh, well, let's do this based off of our religion or whatever the case is?
Well, now think about it for a second. I mean, we started out as humanity, and I want to kind of dig back a little bit. And this is why I put that question, because I was trying to dig, and there's so much information when you start talking about the pyramids and the purpose of the pyramids and their. But I wanted to understand a little bit more about the people that started to create these structures, and I found myself diving deeper here, which took me to another pathway over here, which took me another way over here, where when we got together and we were talking about this, it was so much and so massive that we thought we can't talk about all of it in one setting. And the reason why we were talking about up to maybe 4 settings of talking about this, but, I started digging and I found that the Egyptian people, when they started out, where did they come from? How did they come to be? And a lot of times we never think about that. We just think, oh, they were there.
They're there.
But they were actually, I found where they were saying that they migrated into this space in the fertile Nile Valley.
Yeah, the Nile Valley.
Because of that reason. Their influence, they said, was influenced by Middle Eastern, which was kind of Asian type of European Asian kind of. They were also influenced by Africa, which was over towards the south side of where they are. And then they said by Libya, which was in that Arab kind of state. And so the Egyptian culture was sort of formulated around that element. Then it started digging a little bit into the DNA of that, and it said that their influence was heavily influenced by I believe it was Nubia, which was down
Sudan. I think that's what you're saying.
Yes,
Sudan,
and the people there who actually ruled Egypt before the Egyptian pharaohs, so I was trying to understand that and what they were. So that goes back to the pyramids that you were talking about in those areas right there. Right. They were building that, and I think by the time the Egyptian
it went all the way up,
they decided they wanted to build it even greater.
Right. Well, technology changes, right? People change, mindset changes. To say, oh, well, how do we make things better?
Absolutely, and bigger,
bigger and prettier,
and make this monument.
Make it something very grand for our king, our pharaoh.
Yes.
So that's just natural evolution.
So that sort of. So then I started thinking about, okay, so how long ago was this? And then they started talking, about the dynasties. And during the 25th dynasty, they were saying that. I forgot the smallest pyramid was built. And I still try to wrap my mind around dynasty. How long is a dynasty?
Well, generations, right?
I mean, how many? When
3,
you start to think about that? And so I started trying to understand, you've got this pharaoh that is, and when you start thinking about 3000 BC, and you think 709 BC, all the way to 695 BC, you kind of think, okay, you have to sort of take the negative scale.
That's right. Yeah, it goes backwards.
It's going back to zero.
Backwards to zero. Yep.
And so when you think 3,000, count down to
zero, and then go back up,
and then it start back up on this side where we are at this point in time. So you say, well, when did this start? Because it says the Bible doesn't mention anything in it about the pyramids. It does talk about these these massive structures that were for these kings. But that's about what I found that it said.
Yeah.
But it didn't really talk about these structures. But these structures were here before Jesus came as a child. But then the calendar kind of set itself for that after Jesus' death, which was the point and reference in the BC.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That sounds Christ. Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, the pyramids were here well before then. And you think, what was the driving force and what may have been for the people building this structure? I wonder what was a day like?
I know. I can't imagine. But
if you were working in this, the logistics.
Just crazy.
So,
just crazy.
Trying to order how many stones do we need today?
I know, exactly.
And how many are we going to be able to roll? How are we going to get these stones?
How do we get them there?
Yes.
Yeah, because what did I say? I have one out here. It's So there were local quarries that were used.
Okay.
But there were also far away, distant quarries that were used. How do you get
that from those places?
Yeah, it said limestone from Tora, which is 13 to 17 kilometers away.
Okay.
Okay, it's a lot, but it doesn't sound like, oh man, like that's not doable.
What do you think that is in miles? Or would it?
I don't know the conversion.
See, that's what
to be honest with you. I'm sure it's less, right? So I'm guessing under 10.
Okay.
So, but still, a ways. That's still a long way.
I mean, 2 miles is a ways.
Yeah, 2 miles. Especially if you don't have cars, you don't have, right?
Right.
What were they using? Horse or no? I don't know what they're using.
Elephants, people, you think?
Maybe.
Okay.
We'll have to dig into that.
Yeah, that's another part of it.
And then I saw that they were also pulling granite from Aswan, which I pulled it up on the Google Maps, right, to see how far that is myself. 900 kilometers.
Okay.
Was that It's got to be over 500 miles. It's like from driving here to Sacramento or San Francisco.
So how long would it take you to move massive stones?
And they used barges. They went across rivers.
Okay.
So maybe that helped, right? But still, you got to put it on a barge. You got to make a barge that can fit it. You got to make a barge that can hold the weight, right?
Yes.
Like you have to build things just to do this. Build tools, build transportation. It's like how.
And then to have the passageway to get it to its final destination.
Mm-hmm.
No highways.
So, paved.
And then you say, you got to be there. You got to have this thing there in a certain length of time.
Yeah.
And, and that's part of the mind-boggling part of it is that.
Yeah, it's precise too. So you have to know what layer that you're doing.
That's the part. I mean,
so it has to come on time, right? It's like.
So did you have a piece of paper that said, "Okay, we got to have it"?
Management before project management was a thing, right? Doing this, it's crazy.
And that's the part that sort of we don't have a clear definition.
Yeah.
They didn't have a manual. They didn't have a book that said it was done this way.
Yep.
But yet they were doing this. It's done. It's there. And we still find ourselves fascinated by this monumental structure that is one of the world wonders.
Yeah, 7 wonders of the world. Yeah, the ancient 7 wonders of the world in Giza. I'm wondering too, right? If they were doing this all across the world, if they were doing this in Sudan and it made its way up,
okay.
I wonder if there was a playbook. Like, hey, we already knew how to do this. Written it down. I don't know if they wrote it down. Maybe it was an oral.
You mean like in a scroll or something like that?
Yeah, saying, hey, look, this is, for every, pharaoh, here's how we do it. Here's how we build it. And then someone just took it and made it better, right? Just said, okay, we want to do this instead. We're going to grab it from here. We're going to make it smooth. We're going to do this. And there was a foundation at least.
Maybe the envisionaries went and saw this in these places and thought, okay, this is good right here, but we want our king to have it greater because he is
the
more
best.
Pronounced.
Yeah, he is. He's got more money. He's got more status.
And so we're going to get, 10, 20,000 people to do this. They said, I saw something where they said they found evidence that they, like the cemetery, or they found grave sites of a lot of workers. That were around the area. So, I mean, if you think about it, if it took over 100 years to do this, I mean, a lot of people perished along the way, maybe even from accidents, maybe falls and things like that.
What do you think that looks like? I mean, if we take safety very seriously today,
well,
what did it look like back then? Where that was 1 out of 10 people dying
a day, or
accidents,
get crushed by a stone or something.
We got to do some more research on that. But that's interesting. It's all interesting.
It's gonna be
a good series. I think. So hopefully we're going to learn together, right?
Yeah.
We're going to learn together. We're going to dig up some info. But
and if you guys have any questions or anything like that, or any knowledge, we'd love to hear.
Send us links to watch.
We'll talk a little bit more about this. So
it'll be awesome.
I'm going to dig deeper.
It's going to be fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, it is about our time on this. So
it is.
We are going to. I can't believe how fast it's passing. We were just not starting.
Just talking about. So much things to talk about on this.
Anyway, Act of kindness. We like to have you think about that, and a lot of times I find myself sort of doing certain things. You know, the other day I was driving again on the freeway, and I was trying to give this trucker a chance to get over, and I did that. Yeah, I find myself doing that more, and they really show kind of appreciation for that. I kind of move out and kind of move over. So I think that was one of the other times.
Another time
I said that to you.
Yeah. That's good.
I find myself doing that a lot, and even letting people over. I see somebody need to get over.
It's like it's not worth getting mad about it anymore. Like, come on, road rage.
Absolutely.
No, people are just trying to get somewhere.
An act of kindness. We encourage you to do so.
Please do so, and follow us.
Yes,
on socials on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, TikTok. Facebook. That's the one.
Boom. There we are. Anyway, we'll see you next time. Keep an eye out for our next episode on the pyramids.
Yeah, we're going to do a 4-part series.
We look forward to seeing you there.
Thanks.
Take care.